It's time for the Cover Price Top 10. This time we're going back 3 years. All right, guys, we're going to get into this list. Again, this is the Cover Price list, and this list comes to us from our friends over at Cover Price. We're going to talk about their top 10 list from 3 years ago. What were those books worth then? What are they worth now? Before I get into it, you know what to do with all the social media. Give me a follow. Find me all over the place. Don't forget to check the description down below. There are discount codes all over the place. Gemini mailers, where else? Whatnot. Mutant Beaver Comics, so get yourself some discounts, and of course, the Cover Price discount code. So, all right, let's just jump right into this list. Again, we're going back 3 years. Let's start with number 10. This is Moon Knight number 1 from 1993. Moon Knight was a C-tier character at Marvel prior to the announcement of the Disney Plus series, so much so that when whispers of rumors were circulating of his inclusion in the MCU, 9.8 graded copies of this book were selling for $150. Since then, this book has been on a roller coaster of a ride, hitting highs of $1,300 in 9.8 in 2019, $500 in a 9.8 in 2020. 3 years ago, near mint raw copies of this book were fetching $60. 3 years later, near mint raw copies of Moon Knight number 1 are selling for around $38, with 9.8 copies going for about $326. The comic market is all about timing, so if you got in on this book before the show announcement, you're likely doing pretty well. While this book is a bust for now, Moon Knight's debut in the MCU is well received, and there's no indication of him going anywhere anytime soon. There was just a teasing announcement or rumors or speculation that they actually greenlit a season 2 for Moon Knight. Let's hope we get some Moon Knight in season 2. Let's go on to number 9. This is Spawn number 9. 3 years ago, collectors were buying up copies of the first appearance of Angela and the newsstand especially on the rumors of her inclusion in Thor Love and Thunder or Guardians 3. None of those rumors ended up playing out, but that hasn't really seemed to hurt this book much. 3 years ago, near mint raw copies of this book were selling for around $10, while 9.8s were selling for about $100. Skip 3 years forward, and this book now costs more, about $17 for a near mint raw, and a little less, $71 for a 9.8, making it about a draw. Since Marvel now owns the character thanks to Neil Gaiman-led lawsuit, there's no stopping them from introducing her into future MCU adventures. This and Age of Ultron number 10, which is Angela's first appearance in Marvel Comics, are still good books to spec on if you're a fan of the character. I feel like this is a $20 book all day, near mint raw. First Angela. There are a lot of copies out there. When you start talking newsstand, though, the price could double or more because there's such a small amount of newsstands. Let's go to number 8. This is Captain Marvel number 23. Every year, both DC and Marvel Comics release a slate of new characters, villains, and heroes alike. Some stick, Kamala Khan, Cosmic Ghost Rider, while others are left to wallow in obscurity until in-house writers resurrect them. For now, Brittig, Thor's daughter, and Ove, Namor's son, are the latter, and I definitely said those wrong. 3 years ago, this book was hot because it marks its first appearances, commanding $20 near mint raw copies and no data available for 9.8s. 3 years later, near mint raw copies of this book can easily be found for about $5, while 9.8 copies will cost you $40. This book is a bust. If you're interested in these characters and not afraid of a long-term spec, it's more of a push. Modern new characters, it's very, very hit or miss. We're learning that, right? We've known that already. Let's get to number 7. This is the marked number 9. This is the Haberlin variant. 3 years ago, Brian Haberlin was almost finished with his Image series, The Marked, which follows a secret sect of magicians harnessing power through tattoos. At the time, Haberlin's Virgin variant for issue 9 was heating up, mostly for its gorgeous cover. In 2020, near mint raw copies of the book were selling for $25, where there were no recorded 9.8 sales. 3 years later, there have been no recent sales on 9.8, and near mint copies are found for $7. There is no speculation here, just a great cover, but if you're looking for an investment, this one is absolutely a bust. But if you like the book, $7, it's a little more than cover price. I feel like that's kind of fair, especially for a really hot variant. Let's go to number 6. This is Savage Dragon 253, the Biden-Harris cover. In November of 2020, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris defeated Donald Trump and Mike Pence to win the American presidency. Thus, the Biden-Harris cover of Savage Dragon 253 was picking up steam on the news. Savage Dragon also promoted Barack Obama in the Savage Dragon 137 variant, which is still pretty expensive at $170 to $200 raw. But this one may have peaked upon release. In 2020, raw copies of the new book were selling for $35 with no sales recorded for 9.8. 3 years later, near mint raw copies are selling for $10 and you can purchase graded copies for $30. This issue is a keeper if you're a Savage Dragon fan or a Biden fan, but if you are hoping for a long-term boost, you'll have to keep waiting. This one is a bust. I'm not even going to get into it. Let's get to number 5. The New Teen Titans, number 23. James Gunn gets credit for saving the DCEU with the Suicide Squad, but his show Peacemaker converted die-hard Marvel fans like me. A standout of the series, Vigilante makes his first appearance in New Teen Titans Annual number 2, but his first appearance as Adrian Chase is in New Teen Titans number 23. 3 years ago, Warner Brothers announced that Chris Conrad had been cast for the role, boosting this book to $25 for near mint raw copy and $220 for a 9.8 graded copy. 3 years later, the Peacemaker series revitalized the DCEU and helped cement Gunn's role as a creative director moving forward. This book has taken a bit of a dive, dropping to $10 for a near mint, $83 for a 9.8. There's no doubt that both Peacemaker and Vigilante will be back in Gunn's DCEU, so while this is a bust for now, it's also a good time to buy. We know Peacemaker's coming back. We know Vigilante's coming back. But right now, I feel like these characters are so far on the back burner because James Gunn has so much to take care of before he circles back to a season 2 Peacemaker, which he did say was happening. All right, so it might be, it might be a good time to buy this book. Let's get to number 4. This is Star Wars Darth Vader, number 7. After The Mandalorian kickstarted Star Wars spec, comic hunters have been snatching up all the old and new first appearances in its comics universe. That's especially true of Darth Vader books, including this one, which is the first appearance of the nefarious bounty hunter named Ochi of Bestoon. 3 years ago, this book was new and hot, commanding $15 for near mint raw copies. There were no 9.8 sales at the time. 3 years later, this book hasn't dipped that much at all. Now, it will cost you around $10 for a near mint raw copy. Strangely enough, there had been no recent graded sales in 9.8. This one remains a push, but it could easily become a boost if Ochi appears in any of the Star Wars projects announced this year. I feel like, though, for a $10 to $15 book, even at a loss, even at a bust, what are you really losing? $5, $10? To me, when you see books in this price range, I feel like those are the ones you could take a stab at. But, like I always say, do not do what I say. Do your own research, do your due diligence, take what I say with a grain of salt, and collect grains of salt from everywhere, from news articles, from YouTube videos. Do your research, and then make an educated decision, especially when purchasing books, especially expensive ones. $10, $15 books, okay, I understand. You can, maybe you don't want to put all the time and thought into those, but when you start thinking of these expensive ones and thinking about buying, do your research. Do not listen to me 100%. Just do your own research. Do your due diligence. I'm just relaying information and giving you my opinion. It's just an opinion. All right, here we go. Let's get to the next one. It is number 3, and this is awesome. Love this one. This is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, number 1. The Last Ronin is up there with the books that simply radiate speculation. There were so many copies of this book floating around in 2020 that it might have been a giveaway. That said, this story is incredible, and if you haven't read it, it takes an apocalyptic take on the TMNT universe. 3 years ago, near mint raw copies of this book were selling for $35 and 9.8s for $120. Prices have only climbed up since then, and 3 years later, a near mint raw copy of Last Ronin number 1 will cost you $55. If you're looking for a 9.8, that's also gone up to $157. This book is a boom any way you slice it, and this is a new character, sort of new character, done well, done right, and expanding on the universe. I don't know if you guys know this or not, but they did The Last Ronin 1 through 5. Then, I'm not going to spoil anything, even though the book's 3 years old. They branch off, and then they do Last Ronin Lost Years 1 through 5. And now, I believe it's Last Ronin Re-Evolution, which is a story ongoing. I believe it's an ongoing story in this universe. I don't want to give too much away, but I'm excited. I'll also be dropping a #1 variant for that in February, which is still a ways away, so I haven't really talked about it, and I can't really show the cover, but Ryan Brown is doing it, so we're really excited about that because we know how good Ryan does turtles. Let's go to number two. Number 2. This is the new Teen Titans Annual #2. 3 years ago, the first appearance of Vigilante in costume and cover was having a moment, just like Teen Titans 23. Boosted on spec related to James Gunn's Peacemaker series, this book hit $25 near mint raw copies and $182 for 9.8 graded. 3 years later, this book has stayed warm, making it a draw. You can find near mint for about $15, graded 9/8, dropped by $2, so $180. We already talked about Vigilante. Again, this, to me, this is the Vigilante book to own. This is the one to own. It's also kind of a cool cover. All right, we're going to get to #1. Before we do, I want to remind everybody, use that Covrprice discount code down below. Get yourself a membership. Covrprice is an excellent tool to use, not only to price your collection, but look up information, sales data, trends, and everything like that. So that's it. Let's get to #1. This is Darkhawk #1. In 2020, Geekosity's Mikey Sutton, RIP Mikey, reported that Darkhawk was in development for a Disney Plus series, boosting this 90s classic to #1 spot on our top 10. 3 years ago, this book commanded $40 near mint with a 9.8 going for $310. 3 years later, the hype has died down, but 9.8 graded copies are still selling for more than $100. Today, a near mint raw copy will cost you about $16, while a 9.8 Darkhawk #1 is around $138. It is considered a bust if you bought this book when the rumor mill was swirling. That said, there's still room for a boost if the MCU decides to pursue this character in future storylines. I don't know how much weight Darkhawk really has when we have other characters that I think need to come forward first. Better yet, they need to fix characters that they have now and tell better stories before we get Darkhawk, and maybe finish some stories, Scarlet Witch and Vision and all that, before we get a Darkhawk. So that's it for the list, guys. Remember to check out coverprice.com, their movers and shakers list, and come back next time because I think we're going back 4 years, 2019, pre-COVID. Thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, keep it comics.